Okay, all the slides are coming across okay?
Yep, looks good.
All right, I guess we shall start it out. So I go, welcome everybody to the first of UX Calgary's Upgrade Your UX Job panel series. The idea is to help people in the middle of their careers prepare for the next stage of their careers. It's always great to see a really good turnout, especially virtually. We're hoping that everybody enjoys the session. We have, and excuse the meta humor here, we've recruited some recruiters. And I'm sure we're in for some pretty good discussions about the sorts of things that they look for when they're looking for UX people to join new companies. Just a quick note on Zoom etiquette. Before we go any further, we just want to ask of everybody that we're recording the session today, and the idea is that we can post that later on our website so people can review the conversations and the questions later on. Also, because this is such a big group and because we're going to do at least part of the evening as a panel, as I mentioned there, we'd like to have the focus or most of the pixels given over to the moderators and the presenters, preferably not me, but we'll see how that goes. I don't think I have control over that. So if I could ask everyone not moderating or presenting to turn off their video and also stay on mute unless you have a question and we're in a good spot where you can ask a question. Zoom has a great push to talk feature using the spacebar when it comes down to it. We do encourage everybody to use Zoom's chat feature, add comments, ask questions. One of our collaborators, Marcel, who we'll introduce you to shortly, will be watching the chat for questions, and we'll be asking to seed questions in from the community every once in a while into the discussion. So if you'd like to ask a question anonymously, I mentioned Marcel already, you can look her up in the chat and send her a message directly if you don't want other people to see the type of question, or maybe you want to be sneaky and not tell people, not have anybody know who's asking a question. Yeah, just reach out to Marcel and she will get the question in if we can. So with that, let's talk a little about who we are at Calgary UX. So my name is Mike Rounding. I'm the UX lead at Curve Dental. We've got a design and requirements team there that is lots of fun to work in. Catherine is not here tonight, but Luis is. He is a senior UX architect at PaySafe. We have Carrie also on the line. She's doing a lot of the Zoom controlling stuff tonight. She's a UX design consultant at IBM. We have Marcel, who is helping field questions and do, what's the word, moderation here tonight. And she's a CPO at a family wellness startup. And Barbara is also on the line somewhere here as well, I think. I think I saw her join up. But those are some of the folks that have helped put this thing together, which is hopefully gonna be lots of fun. Quick note about sponsors. We also would like to thank the event sponsors here tonight. Without the help of these folks, we wouldn't be able to put events on like these on. And so we'd really like to recognize Versit, Lighthouse Labs, and Evans Hunt. We're actually using Evans Hunt's Zoom connection here tonight. So we're really grateful to be able to have that channel to put on an event like this during the continued awesomeness of COVID. Without sponsors, there's not much we can do. So thank you very much for your support. If you do work for an organization that's interested in getting involved in a group like this, and when we put on events, we're regularly getting in the neighborhood of 100 or so people showing up to hear the discussions and the presentations, reach out to the Calgary UX group and talk to us about sponsorship opportunities. So let's get into the good stuff. We're going to be chatting tonight about how to transition into the next stage of your career to become a more senior UX person or designer or product designer or whatever we're all called these days, or into a leadership position in that field, in our field. We've invited some truly amazing people to speak about the recruitment process and about what they would recommend and not recommend for mid-level careers. I'm sure there's lots of experience out in the field, but from the recruiter's eyes, we're looking really forward to hear what they have to say. And these are folks who specialize in recruiting for UX. So on that note, I'll introduce the people we've got here with us tonight. And it's a cross-continent group. We have Tim Young, if you can wave. There's Tim. Tim's joining us from New York this evening. So like I said, we're cross-continent. Melanie Pumphrey. There's Melanie, and she is joining us from Calgary. So that's the local talent right there. And then we have Nicole Fernandes as well. And Nicole is joining us from Toronto. Now, Nicole, is there anything that I think you wanted to insert just a quick note here at the start about a poll?
Yes. One quick question I had for everyone was just learning a little bit about the sizes of the teams that you have right now, whether it's just yourself or it's a small group that's handling the UX, or how big we're looking at. I think it'll help us answer some of the questions that might come up later on.
That's terrific. Thanks, Nicole. So hopefully everybody will have seen a window pop up for Zoom for polls and sending in your responses. Thanks for that. So after introductions, let's get into the agenda. So we're going to start by letting each of our speakers introduce themselves a little bit for more detail and give a quick overview of their careers and backgrounds and how their current roles are set up. After that, we're going to get into the panel discussion. We've got a set of questions. It's not necessarily top to bottom in the questions themselves. The goal is to have this be a conversation and learn lots, and we'll see about where it goes. So with that, let's jump into, the slide doesn't quite match the script I have, but that's okay. If you want to stay in touch with Calgary UX, we'll throw this up at the end as well. But we have a Slack channel. There's the meetup, which you probably would have used to find this event, as well as we have Facebook and Twitter links, and you can check out the Calgary UX website. I'm going to stop sharing the slides right now because we're going to get into kind of the main content for the evening. So we're going to start with the speaker intros. So it's about 2 minutes, just kind of let us know who you are and where you're from and what you're looking for and where you've been. We'll start, I guess, maybe with Tim.
Yeah. Good evening. I hope everyone's doing well. Tim Young. I'm many things, but an artist, explorer, observer, photographer, father, supporter of amazing communities, also a coach, mentor, and extremely curious human. My previous career was a designer, art director, and by transformation, iPhoneographer into a global recruiter.
That's great. And apparently motocross racer as well.
And once motocross, yes.
I promise no bikes, no more bikes, don't worry. That's great. Thanks so much, Tim. We're really happy to have you with us here tonight. Let's go on and talk with Melanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie. I'm based in Calgary. My background is in business. I came from a human resources field, and I've been recruiting specifically within IT. The company I work for is Modus, and we're owned by Adecco, which is the largest staffing organization worldwide. So basically, most of the recruiting activity that I do is based in Calgary. However, some crossover with Vancouver, Edmonton, so all around in the Western Canada. And yeah, that's a little bit about myself. Pretty curious human, as similar to what Tim said as well.
That's great. Thank you, Melanie. I guess we'll finish up with Nicole for our invitees for this evening.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole. I have more of a science research type background. And a few years ago, I got into the recruitment side of things. And my previous role, I was a lead recruiter with one of the divisions of Robert Half, another one of the big recruitment agencies out there. And I was part of their creative group division. So that focused more on creative marketing and even digital type talent, like UX designers, of course. But we covered a whole gamut of things over there. And now I've moved to Fiddlehead Talent, which is my own company.
Oh, that's awesome. I share some of your background. I also come from a research background. So that's kind of was my path into career. So that's great. It's really great to meet everybody here. I'm looking forward to hearing lots about your thoughts. And so with that, let's jump right into the content. again, there's questions here, but it's not necessarily a list to go through. We'll see where the conversation and it heads us, but it takes us. But the idea with the discussion is to try to keep it in terms of people who are kind of midway through their career and looking to make that next move. From I've been a UX person for 3 to 5 years. Maybe I'm interested in being senior, a team lead. Maybe there's a management position somewhere that I'm interested in, or director, or even VP. That stuff can exist. There's a VP of design at companies that you will find. So let's jump into it. And this one, the first, I'm just going to be selfish, and I'm going to start with one that I put into the list here, to talk about the proportion of the work that you do. What for the three of you, what do you think the proportion of work that you do on behalf of a UXer who's reaching out to you looking for a position versus a company who's coming to you looking for a UXer is? Or do you focus on one or the other? And feel free to take it. Anybody go for it.
Sure, I'll jump in first. For me, being an independent recruiter and actually being hired more on the freelance and supportive roles, I tend to maybe take on 5% of folks who reach out to me on LinkedIn. The rest is, the other 95% is when I'm within an organization, not only sourcing, but looking for that kind of talent.
Right.
I would definitely agree with that. I think as a recruiter working for an agency, a lot of the work came from more of the company side and the client side versus now being an independent and owning my own company, I'm allowed to change those numbers a little bit more and connect with some more individuals that are reaching out either through LinkedIn or through my network.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Nicole. I do quite a bit, like where our client base is quite large and I'm segmented into Western Canada. Any folks that aren't the greatest fit for a specific job and, you know, they have some great potential and those motivators, anything else that's coming out, I'll try to match their motivators with new opportunities, but also get to know them a little bit better. If they're looking for career growth, try to match them with that. So I know as an agency, it's really kind of bridging that hiring for what the client is looking for. So it would be a little bit more greater onto that side and working with the candidate to get them something that's going to be a good fit.
Right. That's maybe a good segue into a little discussion about how the approach might be different when working with a company versus working with a UXer who's looking for that move. When you're working with companies, like, I guess how much of it is educating? Like, do they know what they want? And is it like they know what they want versus what UXers are coming to you looking for?
I can step into that one. Or Melanie, do you want to go first?
Oh, go ahead.
I can say from my experience personally, a lot of it has been educating the client on the different skill sets that someone in a UX specific position would have versus a UX UI position or some of these other skill sets that they often would like to come with that trait. And there is a lot of education on that, on how you can't really find the, I don't know if you guys call it this, but the purple squirrel or purple unicorn.
Yes. Yeah.
I call it aliens, but no, that has a bad.
Aliens are good too. Yeah. There's definitely a lot on the education side.
I agree.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I agree. Sometimes you almost feel like you're a BA because they'll be explaining the issue. And I'm like, do you know, could really be a good person to help, you know, solve this issue would be a good designer because you need to tap into your audience. Other times it could be something where it's like, you know what you're describing is a little bit more of a researcher. So hearing them out and actually being a good liaison to understand what their difficulties are and then going and finding that talent. So sometimes you're almost a little bit of a problem solver and just kind of catering to what they're looking for. So you almost feel like you're helping be a designer at the end of the day because it's like, oh, let me hear you out what your issue is and I can go and find that right talent to fill that gap. But other times it could be something where you hear a stem of different issues, and it's like you actually need a UI person, you need a researcher, and you need a designer, but you can't have all three in the one. So helping them, I guess, break that down a little bit too. So it can be a very interesting conversation dependent on the struggles that they're having.
Right. Us UXers are kind of ninjas like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting to hear, and I guess it's probably not surprising as well that companies go out, they're looking for something, and they think they know what they need, but it's not necessarily, the knowledge isn't in there on their side on some of that stuff. Do you ever get into a situation where you're talking to a company and you say, you need a team lead or a manager or director or something like that? Like, do you ever go above, even like they'll come and they say, we need UX people, and they'll say, you need somebody to manage your UX people?
Sure. I think the most important thing in every situation I've ever been in, especially being immersed in cultures quickly, is to gain the trust of hiring managers and listening with great intent so that you understand what they think they need, but in those conversations, discovering what they truly need. And a lot of times it's just based on what they've read in a job description, not necessarily what their team is looking for. So gaining that trust and being in that moment to kind of guide and direct and find those aliens and find those people who have within the team that were, the cultural fit, not only for the team as a whole and inspirational, but those folks who are unique and unexpected, I think are usually the best fit.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think, I guess, Melanie and Nicole, did you have any thoughts on that, moving into that leadership need? Or like, do you have
Yeah.
some questions coming in too?
For sure. So actually, when they're describing something, it's like, maybe you have enough to bring on 5 resources, but do you know it would be a little bit more kind of results driven would be having a good leader so that they can actually have someone to learn from and also bring the right skills to the table. So a lot of times it's saying, yeah, I understand you can hire this many resources, but if you have a leader or someone that's looking to get that next step, but they have some strong potential, that's definitely a conversation that we've had in the past, and just really ensuring that it's going to match what they're looking for. And you're able to back that up and speak to that. Because a lot of times, someone that's very strong intermediate and they're looking for that leap and they can deliver, it can definitely bring some good influential kind of results from that.
Cool. Nicole, anything, or we got a couple
I
questions
definitely
coming in
agree
too?
with everything
Okay.
that Tim and Melanie said.
Yeah.
Having someone in that position, I think, is very important. And as Tim was saying, creating that relationship and that rapport with your client to be able to let them know that, yes, you can have all these resources, but those resources need a mentor. They need someone to help them grow. They need someone to help them understand the business a little bit better. They might not be able to handle the budgets, the timelines, all the rest of it, depending on what stage they're hiring. If they're hiring younger junior designers that are new to it, they won't have that type of experience. So giving them that mentorship, giving them the guidance to help grow in their careers is equally as important for a company that is bringing on this new talent and wants them to stay and be retained over the years.
Right. So I think now's a good spot. I think looks like there's a couple questions that would be good to seed in right now. Marcel, are you on the line here?
I am here.
Wicked.
I have a few questions, and in no particular order, but just based on context. I'm going to start with this one. So we have a question from Jackson, who's wondering, his question is, sorry, my computer just went black for a second. What are companies actually looking for in a leader? Like a certain number of experiences leading a team, organizing workshops, facilitate all stakeholders together. Maybe they've built or managed a design system. Like, what do you see that most companies are looking for in a leader? What is the most common? And I would say, what is the most realistic? Because I think we've also all seen like, oh, we want you to be like a team lead, but we want you to have like 20 years of experience. And that's just not really realistic. So would love your opinion on that.
I would say a collaborator. That's the most important thing right now, is someone who works well with others, that is not only inspiring, but as great philosophers have said, those who lead from behind and allow their teams to shine.
Yeah, kind of what I see is, find what you're good at, find how you can build your skills on top of that. So I think you need to identify, you need to be a strong mentor, but you also need to be able to get the job done. How can you split the tasks? Because as a manager, you have to also be overseeing your team. So how can I balance overseeing my team, actually giving them feedback so they can grow? Being a strong mentor, and also, getting the job done. So there's a lot of different qualities that come to play here. But I would say, and maybe it might be a little bit cheesy, but mentorship is very important. I think that you need to have a trickle down effect. What you are delivering, it needs to resonate with your team, and you need to give them the feedback in order to get that. And even if you're in a junior role right now, there's someone that might be starting a new job tomorrow, so you can be that mentor for them. It's really kind of building the next step and continuing to show mentorship, show results, and also give that feedback, because at the end of the day, you're all a group. So trying to deliver those different skills to the table.
Absolutely. I agree with everything Melanie just said. I could not have said it better. Mentorship and coaching is a huge importance. If you have the opportunity in your team, if someone new is being onboarded, or perhaps there's a volunteer opportunity, try and mentor those other designers and help them grow in their careers. It will do amazing things for your own career, and it will also give you different techniques on how to coach others. Because in your role, if you're looking to move into a leadership position, I like to tell everyone that you of course have to manage across to your peers and everyone else, but you also have to manage up. And the way you communicate, the way you're able to understand budgets, timelines, projects, all of that, it needs to really level up if you're looking to step into that role and have them see you in that role.
I think that's an awesome set of commentary. I think it resonates a lot with what I'm actually enjoying right now. So I can talk about it a little bit from the other side if you're interested. It's so I recently become a team lead. I mean, I was a product manager for 5 years. I was a senior UX person for like 8.5 years before that. So coming back to UX after being in the product management world and coming into a team lead position for the first time, I was actually pretty nervous about it. Like I've never done this before, but I actually did a little bit of career counseling in between the positions that I was on. And one of the things that came up very high on my list of things that would bring me, I guess, personal satisfaction was social work. And I was like, social work. But when you think about it, in a leadership position and as a team lead, it's not social work, but it's about helping people. And that's really where the mentorship comes along. How do you help people get what they want, be the best that they can be, and that kind of stuff. I definitely agree with that mentorship. That's probably one of the most fun parts of my job right now is working with the team on the stuff that we're doing. They're more experts than I am because I'm still new-ish to the company, and it's a lot of fun. So I think
That's great.
I agree. And I think too, like, as long as you're a passionate leader, or maybe you're looking to get into a leader role, if you're passionate about something, it will definitely shine through and people will be gravitated to follow you. So if you're looking for that next step, don't be afraid to embrace your passion, really be able to be a mentor for someone that was in your previous position, maybe a little bit more newer, and it will really show through, and it will turn to actually be more of a natural thing. It's I don't think you can fake being passionate about what you're doing and giving it your all and a good day of work.
Because ultimately it's about relationships, and as you build your career, these relationships become much bigger, and you never know where that might become a merger or something beyond your wildest imagination at this moment.
So I think Marcel has a couple more has another question here. So I'm going to let her step in, but I'd like to earmark a topic, and one other thing that I heard pop up in that last kind of section of chat, which is managing up. That's one that I have some thoughts about. I'm interested to hear your folks' thoughts on that as well. But let's get Marcel back in here with another question.
Right. I have one directed to Tim. So Tim, the question is, Tim, what does UX look like in New York City? I'd love to move to NYC or work remotely from NYC, obviously post-COVID. How should I cater my portfolio to the US market? P.S. I'm currently an associate UX director in Toronto.
Well, I think the market is the same pretty much everywhere right now. That's the one sad and unfortunate, but also very fortunate thing that we're in this together at the moment. So I feel like the opportunities are there. It depends on whether you're client side or if you're looking agency side. There is a difference there. Honestly, I would be looking more client side at this point if you have a desire to be in that space. But in terms of your portfolio, I think what is always most relevant, it's the same things that I learned when I was designer, is don't overdo it. I mean, keep it to a minimum of 10 pieces, 10 things that you feel most strongly about, that show you and your authenticity in your work. I feel like there's so many opportunities that are yet seen, and it's also discovering new spaces to explore that, and where you can take that. But I think, again, the continuing education, the constant learning, the never stop being curious about the things that are interesting to you, and work for companies that you feel strongly about who they are. I think that's the most important thing of all. Coming to New York's not the same as it was. I mean, it's a very interesting and it's, I don't want to say disturbing, but it's very odd to be here now because it's a city that is completely silent compared to what it used to be. Even riding the subway is bizarre. So, if the passion is just to be a part of New York, it's not the same place as you might have imagined. So think about the things that are most important in what you are drawn to in being here, and then look at the companies that are most interesting to you and that you would want to be a part of.
That's awesome. Total aside, and it's selfish, my favorite New York memory, and in recent memory, is 10th wedding anniversary camping on the sidewalk beside 30 Rock for standby tickets for Fallon. And we got in, and we made the cut. We got in, and we got to see Ray Parker Jr. perform the Ghostbusters theme song with the Roots.
Nice.
We're just sitting at the back going, "What are we watching?" This is amazing. Yeah,
very nice. No, that's great.
I can understand the appeal of New York. It's
an amazing city. It is.
It really is. Yeah. So it's probably some of the stuff you're saying there is probably a good segue into some other chats about maybe a couple things, like how can a UXer know when it's time for them to move up? Like, have you run into people that like, you need to do something else? Like, have you told people that outright, or like, do people question you and like, how am I ready? Have you seen some of that, I guess? Like, how does a UXer know when it's time to move up?
I think the issue too, it's like you have to recognize when maybe you don't have a good mentor to lean on. It can be something that might be a little bit more personal, or you're ready for a new challenge. There could be some different personal indicators. You really have to be passionate into your current workload because it's something that you do every single day. When I recognize and I hear people's frustration of, are you looking for opportunities? It's sometimes it's a feeling that they describe that they feel stuck. So when they describe these emotions, I, ask them, is it something that can be resolved in your current workplace? And if they say, no, I've been experiencing this for a few years, it's been the same, it might be time to move on. The issue is that no one is going to hand you out a promotion. You really need to work for that. You just can't sit down and say, hey, I'm going to get a promotion tomorrow. It's something that you really need to be bold. You need to be true to what you do. And if you do feel stuck in your current job, then maybe it's time to hit the refresh and find something new. But it could be something where I guess that sensation of feeling stuck is the most common that I hear, and that's a major indicator for myself. It's time to move on.
Great.
I would agree with that entirely. I've heard from a lot of UXers that they either feel stuck or they feel like they are no longer learning. They're no longer in the learning phase. And I think that would be the time to start questioning whether it's just their role. Maybe they've been stuck doing the same kind of procedures again and again, or maybe there's an opportunity to step into more of a leadership role, take on more of the budgeting, the timelines, learn more of the business side of the position. Or perhaps if there really is no more challenge after you sit on it for a while, maybe it is time to move to a different company where you have the opportunity to learn again.
Yeah, I agree. And the one thing I think is a constant is that you've always got to be curious. You always have to ask the question. If you communicate on a constant basis with your team leads, your managers, and people feel that they know what it is that you are needing in the space you're in and how you can do other things to help them, they will give you that opportunity. It's a lot like being in your course, similar to those who seem to do well are those who communicate most with the professors and take that extra effort just to have those conversations. It's the same in the workspace. If you're open and are willing to be vulnerable in those moments and say, hey, I'm feeling like I'm not getting what I need at this moment. What can I do to make things better? What can I do to help the team as a whole? That will support you in what you're looking for and keep you from being frustrated in those moments.
I'd like to just add on to Tim's point as well, is that I know sometimes people, they might not see their own flaws. So you need to have a good communication, even if it might not be your direct manager, find a colleague that can say, hey, here's what I've noticed, but you can't take that feedback personally. You can't get defensive. You really need to hear them out because that can be a major roadblocker. And once that's dissolved, maybe you can move up within the organization. And if that's something that isn't apparent, maybe that's another indicator that it's time to move on because I'm doing everything that I possibly can. And, my job here is done. It's time for a new adventure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, so if I look at my own path, it's interesting. When I moved into the senior position a little ways into my career, it was specifically because I asked. So candor can get you a long way with some of that stuff. And I mean, my reason for asking was not, I don't think it was self-centered or self-motivated. I was interested in the health of the group and the health of the company. And we had a manager for a long time who was not a UX person in the beginning. They were a development manager and they had a UX team. And the company was hiring a UX manager. I didn't ask for the management position. What I said is I've been here a really, really long time and I know kind of the ins and outs of what's going on here. It would probably make sense for the team to have some kind of structure as the manager comes in so that there's a spot where they can go to kind of start percolating and figuring out, okay, where do I need to go within the company to find out X, Y, or Z? And so I asked specifically out of that interest. It was the interest in the health of the group rather than my own career development at that point. When I moved to product management, it was entirely self-driven. That was self-interest. And I said, I know better than those product managers. I'm going to do better. I'm going to do this thing. And I went and I did it. And I did it for 5 years. And it's interesting work. But when I came out of it and I took a few months off, I looked at everything that I was doing and a position came up in front of me that I had not considered. I had never considered a UX team lead or leadership type position. And when I looked at it, I was like, why not? And like a week in, I was like, yep. And it was a position that I applied for that the company saw that I was ready for. I didn't even know that I was ready for it. And as it turns out, that little bit of push from somebody else into that position, and it's been nothing but positive. So it's interesting to see. Sometimes it's you that pushes. Sometimes the environment pushes a little bit. But so there's some serendipity, but there is candor can get you a long way. Because I did ultimately say I'm worried about this, but yeah, I want this. This is going to be a lot of fun. So I think I would like to get Marcel. She's got another good one related to this, I think.
Yes. And I just lost it. Oh my goodness. Sorry guys, I'm so bad at this one job that I have. Okay, so question for everyone is what would make you as recruiters consider someone who doesn't have any formal leadership experience for a UX lead role? What qualities or skills would indicate that potential, and how should that person portray that on their resume / LinkedIn?
I think too, it really depends how long you've been there. I mean, I think it wouldn't do yourself a service if you said, hey, I've been doing this for 6 months. I'm ready for a manager role, because I think you'd be missing gaps. I think, you have to identify when you want more responsibilities. What I look for is looking at the mentorship behind it, looking at how driven you are, and the ability to kind of communicate down and motivate your team. So I'm looking for different words such as mentorship, anything that's team oriented. Those are definitely some good indicators that you will be able to get your team up and running, motivate them. It's little things like that, honestly, but I think you have to indicate when you're ready to take on some more responsibilities. But I definitely do look for mentorship and coaching and different leadership attributes. It doesn't mean you need the title, but what are some attributes that you have that you are helping someone and you're definitely capable of being in a managerial role to lead a team?
Absolutely. And other things I would look for, just to add on to what Melanie was saying, is also looking for the coachability of the individual to see if they are receptive to hearing feedback on their resume or on their interviewing style, and just to see how that sinks in for them, because they also will need to do a lot of learning to be in that position, especially if it's their first time in that role. And that plays a huge part. Other things, soft skills, your communication, your emotional intelligence, how you act in a group of your peers, being able to understand. I think a really important one is being able to understand the strengths and weaknesses of your team members, to understand how to best navigate that and how to work as the most efficient and strongest team possible. Those types of traits are absolutely something I would look for, and something that comes out more in a conversation with an individual for myself personally versus just a resume.
And to add to that, Nicole and Melanie, I would say the one thing I always look for is how many eyes are in the conversation. And not so much we, the team, and the things that are more collaborative. So those are the things I also look for, especially with junior talent.
Cool. Did you have any follow-up there, Marcel, or do we want to move to kind of the next, I guess, topic?
I have another cool one, and I'm curious about this one myself. So what is the panel's take on business designers? Are they a hybrid of UX lead and product manager? This is because the panel stated that a leader needs to know how to manage time, budget for a feature, project, and knows how to get the job done, even if there's not enough manpower. Also, do you think it might be important to have a certification as CSPO or CSM to show that you can lead and get the job done in an agile way? It was a pretty long question. We can break that into bits if you want. I guess the first part of that is, what is the panel's take on a business designer? Because that has been a bit of a trending word in the UX community. Title, sorry, not word.
I think for like the role of business designer, it seems like you're really trying to put in place some centric design methods, whether that be, you know, a certain type of kind of visibility and how that's really going to trickle in. I haven't seen it a ton in the Calgary market. It's really seems to be design driven. So I've seen a lot that would be agile related to design, but I feel like the business design might be creating a different beast there. I haven't seen a ton of the business design demand.
Me either.
Same. I haven't seen that come up very often. I would imagine, if I had to take a guess, it would be more of the product design side, but truthfully, I haven't seen it.
I'm trying to figure out what to say here. Business design and Nicole just mentioned product design. What is the difference?
I understood it that like business designer actually kind of applies some customer centric apply methods to prototyping, maybe development. I understand product would be just product driven. That's kind of how I viewed it. But really, if it's business design, how are we going to design these different steps into our UX process to create to craft this, you know, sleek design that we're driving for?
So I just kind of,
sorry,
go ahead,
Michael.
Nicole. No, go ahead, Nicole.
My understanding of the product role was it had a bit more of a business element to it, where you would be able to look at the marketing aspects, the budgeting aspects, quite a few of those more business oriented, more of a business oriented mindset when you were looking at a product, not a strictly design customer centric one. That has been mine, and I wonder if that is more similar to that. But again, I haven't seen the business design. I'm trying to look it up right now and see if I can get a better answer, but that's been my understanding of the product role specifically.
And I only ask because, I mean, I've been in this stuff a long, long time. That's the first time I've heard the term business designer in this discussion here. So that's interesting. What I was going to add on to this was just based on spending 5 years as a product manager. And I mean, even if I think about what I was doing as a senior UX alongside product management ahead of that role, I think there's a huge benefit for UXers in understanding product from the business side. It's not just all the design and the perfect design that's going to make everything. There is a business there. It's, if you come from a research background like myself, there's not always time to do the recruited user studies and the psychology department, you know, approval for your research study and all that great stuff. But sometimes 5 minutes of UX is all you're going to get time for. How do you make it count? And it's understanding that product side, I think, is a vital piece of becoming a leader here. I'm being really, I'm stealing the spotlight and I shouldn't be doing that. But
I can actually follow up to that question as well, because I've actually been coming across quite a few business designers as of late, just in my job. To my understanding and in my experience, which is all that I can speak to, is that a business designer is really someone who can work around business constraints and work within business goals without that human UX element. Whereas a product designer is kind of a hybrid between UX and business design. It's someone who can think with a business cap on, like they know how to work within constraints, they understand how to work within requirements, they know how to work technically. But they also do have insight into UX research and they talk to users and they're doing their testing and things like that. So it really is that hybrid. I think as of late, I'm seeing more business designers or that role. It's just because there are, or what I've heard is that there are quite a few UX designers who can approach a problem from a UI human perspective, but can't really understand how that would benefit the business or if it actually aligns with the business goals. And that's just been my experience.
Oh, that's interesting.
Interesting. So it's more that product market fit type of an approach.
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like you're just working within business requirements and not talking to people and not taking best practices and things like that. You're just building solely based off of business requirements.
We see that quite a bit with product owners from that's kind of what I've seen, but I haven't. Maybe it's something new I haven't come across, but I've commonly run into that with product owners.
There's an entire session in the terminology and titles and what they may entail, because you've got product owner, you've got product manager, you've got project manager. Often people project manager, product manager, they view as the same thing, and they're very much not. We've got business designers, we've got product designers, there's business process design, there's all sorts of stuff.
Producers have.
Yep, producers, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and it's fascinating. So maybe that's an interesting topic in and of itself is if you're looking to move up, what role do you even look for? Because it can be hard to sift through and say, that's a UX person, next step.
Yeah, and it'll depend on the market. Completely on the market.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I was listening so intently that I'm completely unprepared to move on to something else here. Marcel, if you have something cool, if not, I'm going to pick something.
I have many questions, Mike. We have 5 minutes. Oh my goodness, time flies. All right. Oh, where'd it go? Okay. This is a little bit going into that COVID space again. So some people love that, some people don't, but I'm gonna try it out. So panel, have you found that there are many senior designers or product designers looking for junior roles or taking less pay because there's such a huge pool of candidates with COVID-19?
Yes, I think that's true across the board. I think folks are in a position where they need to work, and unfortunately that comes across as desperation, which is something that we don't necessarily I think I speak across the board for that. We tend to want to help folks, but when we see someone overqualified, we usually don't even go to that space because we understand what the circumstances are. For me personally, what I try to do in those moments is if it's someone that I feel that I can support in some way, I'll coach them in a different area and give them options that they may consider. But for the most part, yeah, it's starting to happen quite a bit.
Absolutely, especially on the freelance or consultant side. If there are individuals looking for roles, I'm seeing a lot of people taking a pay cut on that side. While I do understand it, I also like to educate both the individuals I'm working with and the companies to hopefully get them to avoid doing that. Because at the end of the day, even if they do get someone at a much lower salary than they might normally pay, that doesn't mean they're going to be able to retain that individual, because that UX designer, they know what they're worth on the regular market. So they might leave a year in, 2 years in, and then you're back to hiring, instead of looking at it as a long-term progression where you have the mentorship, you're giving them the pay that they rightfully deserve and have earned in that marketplace, and being able to continue that relationship.
I think so, like to agree to Nicole's point, there's no sense of joining something if you're not going to be able to provide for your family, if it's not going to hit your own personal motivators. There's nothing wrong with not taking something because it's not the right fit. You're not going to be satisfied if it's something that's a drastic pay cut. You do need to come to terms. Yes, I am seeing some cuts into the market, but it has a lot to do with the client. A lot of the clients are continuing to pay the same, and they want to attract good people. So, it's a really, you do have quite a bit of power here. If you are a strong resource and they want you, there is some negotiation power as well. So don't feel like you're stuck into something, because if they want you, hopefully you can come to common grounds. I am seeing a bit of a cut, but it's very it does change within the client and what they're driving out. So there is some different pushing factors here, but I wouldn't say it's completely drastically different from pre-COVID days. But there is some small changes, but nothing that's very alarming that I've seen so far.
Yeah, that's terrific.
One more
Sorry.
comment, sorry. I was going to say also too, if it's something where, they are offering something that's so drastic, it doesn't make sense. It's like, thanks for wasting my time to interview me. And this is, it's just crazy to offer such a low scale. Um, there's a lot of remote jobs right now, and you can get in with a good company and work remote, say from something that's USA based, something that's in Vancouver, you're in Calgary. So there's a lot of remote opportunities going around. So it doesn't necessarily need to be local. It seems like there is hiring that companies are adjusting to fully remote work. So you do have a wider range, and hopefully that will catch on, because it would be great to have some different opportunities that you can get your hands on.
Yeah, that's what I keep inspiring people to consider these days, is not to limit themselves to the market they're in, to look at opportunities that may happen in Europe, or even in Shanghai or other markets. There's opportunities there as well.
Companies are still figuring it out. I think if something goes sideways, at least they're planning right now. I can certainly tell you that the companies that want to move forward with innovation, they are working on plans, how they can have their workforce, how they can get new talent and really be able to push what they have set. There's a lot of companies that are being very, courageous during all this and having it set up well enough to be able to work remote to do that as well.
Awesome. So we're looking at the time here, and we're at after 8 already. The conversation goes really, really quickly. It's a lot of amazing insights here. What I think we're going to do is we're going to put one more question in right now that I think Marcel said she had a really good one. And we've honestly, the kind of the guidance questions that we started with, we've just kind of naturally covered the whole thing throughout the course of the conversation, which has been fantastic. Maybe just a quick note before Marcel steps in with one more question here. I don't think I'm putting up anybody on the spot by saying the panelists have all invite people to reach out to them on LinkedIn to chat further, ask questions, myself included. If you want to see it from a UX guy's side, or UX person's side, feel free to reach out to me as well over LinkedIn. I've had a couple people do that based on previous events, which has been, again, lots of fun. I like the mentoring part, like I said. So with that, we are probably going to wrap up after the next question, but Marcel says she's got a really good one. So let's go.
I have a very consistent one, I will say. I've gotten the same question from a few people. But before I do get into the question, I just want to make it known that I've noted down all of your questions, and obviously we can't get to all of them today. But what we're going to do is we're going to send all the questions to Melanie, to Nicole, and to Tim, and they, if they're so kind, will take some time to answer the questions, and then we will post that in Slack for everyone to review, because it always sucks when we can't get to all the awesome questions. So we will definitely do that. So the final question, and I've gotten a similar question from about 5 people, is how do you perceive people who have been freelancing or contracting and haven't really had teams to lead, but have technically led themselves? How do you show that value and experience? Like, for example, this person writes on Medium, does continuing education, and mentors others on LinkedIn already. So what more can they do to show value?
Well, I think the most important thing is to constantly, Medium's a great space to share your thoughts and how you encounter your everyday life and your work life. I think the more that you put out there to promote yourself in that way, for some reason, now if you write something, it's golden. So I think that's an opportunity to take advantage of, not only through Medium, but social media, Instagram, all those spaces that you can build your worth. It's something to definitely look at, because not only is LinkedIn an important part of that, but I think being a freelancer and emphasizing the spaces you've been in that are more well known are important, especially now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Tim's point. I think it's really important to plan. Like, I know planning is time out of your day, but you have to give it some thought as to what's your starting point, Where do you want to go? I think the benefits that you have as a freelancer too is that you have a lot in your portfolio that someone might not already have. So use that freelance to your benefit and create your own projections on how you want to get there. Planning is so important. Like, I can't tell you how many times I say I'm going to do something and then I don't do it. Like, having a solid plan will be the building blocks to help you get there. Even if it's something that you're starting off by one thing at a day, you mentioned kind of mentoring yourself. What does mentoring yourself mean? Have you already done some planning? Have you seen your own personal growth? Because you can take that and also make it beneficial, but until you actually recognize that growth and put it on paper or kind of make it known, it's going to be difficult for other people to pick up on that. So definitely do some planning, definitely continue to build your own brand and identify the missing elements that is being a roadblocker right now.
Absolutely. And if in the example, I believe it said that they were doing some mentorship to other designers, things like that. I would definitely make sure to include that at the top of your resume in some of your highlights and achievements. Mention that you've mentored X amount of people. And if you have the ability to, perhaps offer that as one of your references when you're moving forward with a recruiter or with another company, to show that here's someone I have mentored, here's what they have to say about me as well, which is, again, it's managing above, across, and if you have someone that you're mentoring, how you would act in that position, because that's what they want to hear. They want to hear how you're going to be treating the other individuals as a manager or as a lead. So it's a really, really strong basis to start with. Other things you can put in is things we were talking about before, showing your understanding of the business as a whole, not just the design elements, but how it factors in for budgets, timelines, scoping out the projects to begin with, especially if you're a freelancer, because then you're coming in at whatever stage it might be. Perhaps the initial research has already been conducted and you take it from there, you build out the wireframes, and then you're passing it off to a design team. Maybe you're passing it off to developers, but help us understand exactly where you picked up that work and where you left off. Other things to include: always play up how you're managing your clients. Also show how you have ongoing relationships, because that is sometimes a question mark for companies when they're looking at freelancers, is whether they're able to have those long-term rapport, long-term relationships with their peers if they switch into full-time work. So including all of those different factors that might be a question for a client, that will really put you in a great position.
I absolutely agree. I think to identify and have it really in writing how you were able to build those deliverables. When you think deliverables, how were you able to get there? What did you do to get that? I think, identify what you're good at and then build on top of that and really have it built into layman's term to kind of more deliverable focus, because hiring managers can be very business oriented and they want to look at the deliverables. So even, demonstrating that in a resume, I think that will be really helpful.
And bring out those unique skills. Always the
Yeah.
things that are unexpected.
Absolutely. And just to add one more thing to that, I think it's really important, like Melanie was saying, to understand the audience of who you're sending your resume to. It might be a UX manager or it might be a creative lead of sorts, but it could also be the HR team or a project manager or someone else that is not really creative, doesn't really have a creative mindset, and might not understand what you're sending. So make sure that everyone will be able to understand it, even if they're not in the industry. That way they understand what your skill sets are, how it checks off for that specific role, how all of those things play into it. And of course, then once you're in front of a UX manager or VP, whoever it might be, they'll understand your work when you have that conversation.
Completely agree.
That's awesome. Well, at this point, I think we're going to call it for this evening. So many different lines of communication that we didn't, get into. Like we could have talked about possible training. We could have talked about the difference between hardware and software product companies, product versus service companies, all sorts of things that we could have got into in terms of where you can look at and where you can grow your career. And it's so many different ways to do it. So I want to thank the panelists here for being so generous with their time, because we are at 10 minutes after the hour. And I realize time zone is an effect for some folks here. So really, really appreciate you being so giving with your time here. Very quickly, I am going to share this again. If I got the right button, there we go. It's always interesting as a UX person if you can find the button in the UI you're using. You evaluate everything. It's horrible, horrible way to live your life. But I want to invite everybody to, from the Calgary UX team, to stay in touch. I showed this slide kind of at the beginning, but in a little bit more detail here. We have a Slack channel. Yes, it's a hard to remember set of letters there, but if you follow or hit up our website at calgaryux.com, you'll be able to find links to our Facebook, Twitter, Meetup, which is where we're posting events like this, and the Slack channel as well. So yeah, thanks everybody again. This was another really, really great chat with some really interesting folks. And we will post our follow-up, as Marcel said, in Slack. And as mentioned before, the panelists, reach out to them on LinkedIn, meet up, learn, get mentorship,
Absolutely.
become a mentor.
Yes.
It's good stuff. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.